Welcome to Antioch Baptist Church. We thank God you chose to worship with us today. We hope you hear something today that will inspire you throughout the week.
Is God not a healer? He can do anything but fail. And we have more and more testimonies throughout this church that God can do anything but fail. So I'm trusting him this morning that he's going to do anything but fail. Amen. Genesis, the 16th chapter. I am becoming fond of this verse. I've preached it before. And like Reverend Potter said, I don't know if I did it justice, so I'm going to try it again. Genesis, the 16th chapter. I want to begin with the 7th verse. I'm reading from the New Living Translation. And the angel of the Lord found Hagar beside a spring of water in the wilderness, along the road to Shur. The angel said to her, Hagar, Sarah's servant, where have you come from and where are you going? I'm running away from my mistress Sarah, she replied. And the angel of the Lord said to her, return to your mistress and submit to her authority. Then he added, I will give you more descendants than you can count. And the angel also said, you are now pregnant and will give birth to a son. You are to name him Ishmael, which means God hears. For the Lord has heard your cry of distress. This son of yours will be a wild man, as untamed as a wild donkey. He will raise his fist against everyone, and everyone will be against him. Yes, he will live in open hostility against all his relatives. Thereafter, Hagar used another name to refer to the Lord who had spoken to her. She said, you are the God who sees me. She also said, have I truly seen the one who sees me? So that well was named Bir Lahai-roi, which means well of the living one who sees me. It can still be found between Kadesh and Bered. I just want to ask you this morning, what do you see? What do you see? As just a background scripture for us, I also want us to keep in mind a scripture in 2 Corinthians, the 5th chapter and the 7th verse. I think it's pretty familiar to us all. We walk by faith, not by sight. How many of you know that despite what we do, the plans we make, the roadmap we have, the way and the things we have in our mind, how things are going to go, it doesn't always work out that way. Sometimes life happens. I don't know if you've seen the commercial. I think it's a Tropicana commercial where the guy sits down and he's in his suit and he's ready for the day. And he sits down at the table with the newspaper and he has people gathered around him. And he begins to say, so what's on the schedule for today? And a girl says, well, you know, you're going to be late to work. And he says, oh, okay, all right. And he said, okay. And then another man says, yes, and you're going to have a flat tire. Great, good, I'm glad about that, okay. And then another one says, and by the way, while all of this is happening, it's going to be raining outside. And he says, good, I'm glad I had my orange juice. Has anybody seen that commercial? And the more I look at that commercial, I thought it was just crazy the first time I saw it. But I think I understand what the premise was behind the commercial, that it's all in how you see things. It's the perspective that you take. And so I am becoming more and more aware that life just happens. no matter how you plan, no matter what you think you do, no matter what you wake up in the morning and think, oh, this is the day that the Lord has made and it's going to be great. I woke up on the right side of the bed and hey, Jesus is on my side. And then as soon as your feet touch the floor, the dog barks and he wants to go outside. Something happens and the phone rings and your schedule gets off and life just happens. And sometimes we find ourselves in tough situations that we never expected to be in. Things happen and situations arise that we have no control over, and we find ourselves in situations that we didn't create, things we had nothing to do with. Circumstances just seem to find you as you are going about your everyday life. As I look at this text, I told you I've preached it before, and the more I read and study and try to understand and get in the heads of these people, the more I understand that they really were not bad people. Abraham and Sarah were just regular people. They were just people who were trying to make it and found themselves in a bad situation. They weren't faithless people, no matter what you've heard. They weren't mean or evil people with no hearts. I don't even believe that they were selfish or unrighteous or tried to be deceptive with other people. I don't believe that they were intentionally disobedient. I have really come to the place where I believe that they were just like most of us, trying to hear God and wait on the promises to come to pass. And sometimes, you know how we do, we get a little impatient. I don't know too many people that like to wait. Anybody? Do you like waiting on the bus? Do you like to wait for that check to come in the mail? Do you like to wait when somebody puts you on hold, and even if it's just for a few seconds, it seems like 2 hours, right? Anybody in here that just likes to wait? You wake up in the morning and say, Lord, can I wait on something today? Anybody? They just got caught up with life. And the more I play this thing in my head, the more I come to understand that maybe their problem was a sight problem. Maybe they just couldn't see past what was in front of them, or what wasn't in front of them is a better use. And sometimes, if you think about it, sight, when we think about it in the natural, it manifests in different ways, right? Some of us have limited vision. Some of us wear glasses or contacts. Some people have a distorted view where their depth perception can be off. Some of us have trouble with the peripheral view, right? Some people are nearsighted. Some people are farsighted. Some people have trouble seeing objects clearly. Some people have astigmatism or weak muscles in the eye that causes their eyes to cross. Some people can't see at night. Anybody know about vision problems? Vision problems, sight problems. And if you think about when we get in a car, there are windows all around so that we can try to get the best view of things, right? And then they go even further to help us out. They have a rear view mirror to help us see behind us, and then they have side mirrors so that we can see around us, right? And still, we find blind spots in the car. I think today that is indicative of life, that there are blind spots all around us. And even when we think we can see everything, even when we think we know the plan, we still have blind spots. So I think if we look at this story in a different way, everybody in this story, from Abram to Sarah and even Hagar, suffered from a lack of sight in some way. Hagar found herself in this situation that she really had nothing to do with. She was caught up in somebody else's confusion, somebody else's misfortune, somebody else's mess, right? Through no fault of her own, she found herself in a bad situation because Abram and Sarah had been given a promise. But there was only one problem. The promise hadn't come to pass yet. And so they decided, I know the text says Sarah decided, but Abram went along with her. So they decided that they were going to help out God. We're going to help God along just in case he forgot, just in case he got caught up with Reverend Gay's problems, just in case he's worried about Reverend Dawson, just in case he's worried about Barbara back there. I want to make sure that God still is with the program, so I'm going to help him out. So Sarah says, I know what to do. I have a servant, Hagar, and I'll just give her to you, which was common practice back then. I'll just give her to you, Abram. Y'all sleep together, and then I will have the son that God has promised. I'll help God out. How many of us have ever been there, done that? You look up and life has happened and you find yourself in a situation that you had no control over. The job ends, your wife leaves, illness hits, your grades drop, you come home and the cat has died, a car hits you from behind, and then you find out that they don't have insurance. The bus is late and you can't have another tardy slip to your job. Tornado hits, you come outside and you have a flat tire. Every time you drive by the gas station, gas has gone up. You come to get a cup of coffee and the last cup of coffee is gone. Your kid gets in trouble. It's raining outside. The computer crashes. You come home and electricity is off. You lose your homework. And then on top of that, San Antonio loses the game. Now, I don't know if y'all mad about that. I'm not mad about that. But you decide maybe it's better to just run away. Maybe it's better to just pack my bags and go. That's what Hagar decides to do. She decides, you know, I'm caught up in this situation that I had nothing to do with, so I'm going to leave, and I'm going to run into the wilderness, and guess who she finds in the wilderness? The angel visits her and says, where have you come from? And where are you going? Simple question seems like, right? And you know me, I'm looking at the text like, why did you ask that question? Now, we know that God knows everything, right? God knows where she's been. God even knows where she's going, even when she doesn't know. So you have to know by now that when you see questions in the Bible that it's really not about the person answering the question, right? It's not because God doesn't know, right? So I began to look at it differently, and I think maybe I missed this the last time. Maybe the Lord was asking Hagar to look with different eyes. Maybe the Lord was asking her, Hagar, where is your sight? The angel asked, where have you come from and where are you going? Maybe the Lord was asking her, because she was going to need this later in the journey, do you have hindsight, Hagar? Are you able to look at the past and see how you could have done things differently, even though it wasn't your fault. Remember, she is a servant. She's a slave girl. She has no control over what she does from day to day. But remember, and I didn't read that part of the text, but if you're familiar with the story, remember after Hagar and Abram slept together and she found out that she was pregnant, what did she do? She began to look differently with contempt at Sarah. Like, you couldn't have this baby, but I did. So maybe she got a little prideful or a little arrogant or a little boastful. You know how some women can be. Well, you know, if you could take care of your man, we wouldn't be in this situation. So maybe she popped her collar and was, you know, quite rude and quite mean. And so maybe God was asking her, what could you have done differently in this situation? And God wasn't saying that Sarah was right to mistreat her. God wasn't saying that the situation was right. But let's look at you, Hagar. Hindsight. Do you have hindsight? Can you look back over the past and look at not just the reality of the situation, but even the possibilities and things that you could have done differently? How could it have shaped up differently if your part had been different? Don't worry about them. But what could you have done differently? Hindsight. I'm wondering today, do we have any hindsight? Can we look back at situations and think about, could I have gone a different way? Is this something that I want to repeat again? What should I do differently? What should I do the same? Do I really want to go down that road again? Because some of us keep going around that mountain over and over and over, expecting something different, but not changing any of the variables. I hope y'all are hearing me. Hindsight. Have you ever had the opportunity, and sometimes God gives us that, the opportunity to look back at some of the choices that you've made, some of the choices that you made, and see how your life could have been different. How if you had said yes a little bit earlier, maybe you would have been down that road. If you hadn't said that particular thing, you know, you don't have to respond to everything. Maybe if you had kept your mouth shut, you wouldn't have been in that situation. Maybe if you weren't so quick to try to fight everybody. Hindsight. Sometimes, and I think this is what we need. The angel of the Lord said, where have you come from? Look back. Sometimes hindsight will cause us to look and say, okay, how did God bring us out the last time? Has God ever left you alone? Has God ever not made good on a promise? Hindsight. Where have you come from? And then, where are you going? Maybe we need a little foresight too. Being able to look forward to things that are not present right now. How many of us are able to look at something in its present state and see something different? Looking forward to something. Most of us, and I am guilty, are so used to looking at the immediate circumstance. What's going on right now? We find ourselves in places on our jobs. We find ourselves with difficulties in family. We find ourselves with, we woke up one morning and the doctor said we had cancer. We woke up one morning and the money ran out. And instead of being able to have foresight and think about the future, I think sometimes when the psalmist is talking about sinking in the muck and mire, that's what it's talking about. It's getting caught up in that present circumstance. It's almost like quicksand. Has anybody ever been there? Where all you see is what you see. You can't see the forest for the trees. All you see is that attitude in front of you. All you see are these roadblocks and these obstacles. All you see is how you presently are. But do you have foresight in looking forward to something? Maybe that's what God was asking Hagar to consider. Where have you come from and where are you going? And Hagar answered, she said, well, I'm running away from my mistress. I'm running away. And what did the angel say to her? Go back. I don't know about you, but that seemed quite harsh to me. You mean you are telling this slave girl to go back into a terrible situation where she has no control, where she doesn't even have control over her body. She doesn't have control over her mind. When she wakes up in the morning, her day is totally devoted to somebody else. And you mean to tell me, I'll go back and forth with God, I don't know about you, but you mean to tell me that you are going to tell her to go back into that situation and submit to this woman's authority? Wow. Wow. Anybody else got a wow? Doesn't seem fair, does it? But maybe God said, I asked you, where did you come from? Couldn't answer it. Where are you going? Couldn't answer it. You just wanted to talk about right here in the present. So maybe you need to go back until you're ready. Because I don't see any vision in you, Hagar. What do you see? And you remember a lot of times in the text, in the Bible, God asked Jeremiah, what do you see? And he said, I see a almond tree, a branch of an almond tree. And God said, that is right. God even tells Abram in this same story, look into the sky at the stars. Even consider the dust of the earth. Your descendants will outnumber what you see. I asked you to keep that text, we walk by faith and not by sight, in the back of your mind. Because that text is not talking about it's not saying that sight is bad. It's asking for you to have a different kind of sight. A different kind of sight that has vision, that can see the possibilities. Maybe part of Hagar's plan is that maybe part of her problem is that she didn't have a plan. No vision. She couldn't see past what was right in front of her. When we have vision, we can anticipate. We can see what others can't see. We can envision. You know, the prophets, they would talk about having a prophetic vision. They could see things that nobody else could see. Hindsight is able to look into the past. Foresight gives you a glimpse looking forward into the future. But vision, it enables you to see the present with all of its possibilities, with all of its promise, and with all of its potential, but it's right here in the present. I've been reading a book, The Traveler's Gift, and if you haven't read it, you should. In fact, Marla was one who told me about it, and one part of the book really impressed me. I mean, all of it's good, but it was a particular section in there where the guy met, and I don't want to tell you the story, but he met Christopher Columbus. And Christopher Columbus talked about how people thought that he had totally lost his mind. Remember, back during that time, they thought that the earth was flat, right? But Christopher Columbus said, no, it's round, and I'm going to prove it to you. And he talked about how everybody around him used to ask him, listen to the question, do you know where you are? Do you know where you are? Do you know what you are? They would tell him, you are uneducated. You are poor. You are the son of a weaver. What could you possibly know about the sea? But you know what he said? He said, where I am really doesn't matter. He said, the question is, do you know where I'm going? Now, he said, and I wish I could tell you the story. I'm not going to do it. I don't want to spoil it for you. But I need you to get this point that Christopher Columbus, this guy was sailing with him, and it actually took him on the boat when Christopher was sailing around the world. And Christopher was talking to him, trying to encourage him, and he said, you know, the question is not who I am right now.
Thank you for worshiping with us today. Check out our website and see how we're touching our community for Christ. And if you would like more information on this broadcast, please contact us at the number listed below. And have a blessed day.